So, getting to the meat of the issue, how do you determine how someone should be classified? You have someone working for you. How do you determine if they should be an employee or an independent contractor? Well, there's no simple answer. There's no black and white answer. And in fact, say the IRS, of course, a federal agency, has its own list of about 20 factors. Every state's different, though. And this is going to vary from state to state. Someone told me this morning that there was an issue with California workers. Well, that's California, and they tend to be very heavy-handed, very pro-individual. Things are going to be different in Missouri and Illinois, where we are. To give an example of this, there was a big case that got a lot of publicity with FedEx drivers. And FedEx, at least in the past, classified all their drivers as independent contractors. Well, of course, there's FedEx drivers all over the country, and there was a big class action, and the judge didn't and couldn't just rule across the board, yes or no. He had to look state to state. And the breakdown was, well, in some states, they are independent contractors, and other states, they're employees. And they're doing the same job, but it just goes to show that every state is different. But let me give you some general factors. I think what it comes down to is the individual in business for himself or herself? Is the individual doing his or her own business enterprise? Or are they working for a company? So there's no easy answer, but let me talk about some factors. Does the person have specialized skill? If the person has specialized skill, it's more likely that they're going to be an independent contractor. Does the person invest his or her own capital, his own money, take his or her own risk in this work? Well, if so, more likely they're independent. Does the person use his or her own tools or equipment? If so, more likely that they're independent. Payment is an important factor. Does the person get paid for the project? Does the person get paid for the result? Or does the person get paid for doing the actual work itself, say by the hour? If the person gets paid a flat rate for the project or for accomplishing the result, more likely that they're independent. Does the person have the discretion to determine the manner and methodology of performing the task and getting that result? If so, more likely they're independent. If the issue is just achieve this outcome, do this result, build this IT architecture, get the result, more likely they're independent. What do the parties call themselves? If the parties don't even call themselves independent contractor relationship, well, then they're probably not. They're probably employer-employee. Two good examples of independent contractors are a plumber. Let's say you call a plumber to your home because your sink is leaking, and you call the plumber. What do you want? You want them to fix the sink. You don't really care how they do it. You don't have the tools for them to do it. You don't go out to Lowe's and buy all the tools and equipment and get it all there. You call up the plumber and say, achieve this outcome, and I'll pay you $200 to do it. Well, that's a good example of an independent contractor relationship because the person's in business for themselves. They take the risk themselves. The plumber has his or her own insurance. They use their own tools. They determine the manner and methodology that they're going to use to achieve the result that you're looking for, and you're paying them for that result. Another example is a computer technician. A computer technician may be on call to troubleshoot, to fix IT situations, to fix computers that come up. He may be on retainer to do that. Well, again, that's a good example of an independent contractor relationship. The person's free to work for other companies and organizations, but the technician's on call. And when the technician gets called, he's tasked with achieving a result. The company who calls him is not going to say, here's exactly what we want you to do to achieve the result. They're just going to say, whatever. Our server's down, we can't connect, fix it. They're looking for a result, and that's a good example of an independent contractor relationship. Let me give you 10 questions to ask yourself, whether you're in an independent contractor role or whether you're a small business owner who takes on independent contractors. 10 good questions to ask to give yourself a good idea about whether people are properly classified. As I touched on before, what do the parties consider themselves? Have all the contractors signed written independent contractor agreements? Do they receive 1099s? If not, well, you probably don't get off the ground with the classification, because if you had people sign W-4s and you're taking out payroll taxes and then giving them W-2s at the start of a new year, well, that's kind of the end of the story, because you're treating them like employees, so they're going to be employees. Second question is, are the contractors' duties integrated with the core business operations? That is, are they highly skilled, or are they doing something that really is a core business function? If it's a core business function and they're working side by side with other employees, well, then they're probably going to be employees themselves by their nature. Do the contractor's services have to be performed personally? Another good factor. Must the contractor's services be performed on site during specific hours? This goes to manner and methodology. What do we do if we're employees? Well, our boss tells us our work times. Get here at 9, you work till 5:30, you get an hour for lunch, and here's your office location. Well, that's an employee-employer relationship, most likely, because they're telling you, they're controlling the manner in which you do your job. If the person retains the discretion and autonomy to do the job when they want, where they want, well, that's a good factor suggesting an independent contractor relationship. Does the contractor perform full-time services to just one company, or do they work for other companies also? If an individual is working for an organization for 40 hours a week, 2,000 hours a year, well, that's going to weigh in favor of an employee relationship, because there seems to be some exclusive relationship there. But if the person's independent and working for, giving those skills to several organizations at the same time during the course of a year, that seems to be more independent. Does the contractor receive employee benefits, such as insurance coverage or paid time off? Well, that seems to suggest more of a traditional employee relationship. As I touched on before, does the contractor do the same job as or work side by side with company employees? Does the contractor have a supervisor who directs his or her work, or even does the contractor supervise company employees? Non-compete agreements. Non-compete agreements with independent contractors are not per se invalid, but if you have a non-compete agreement, it's much harder to enforce in an independent contractor relationship. And putting someone under a non-compete agreement suggests more of an employee relationship, where the organization wants to have the right to control what the person does for the organization. Is the contractor expected to really do other things other than just achieve that result you're looking for? Is the contractor expected to attend company meetings or ongoing training as to company policies and procedures? Well, those are things that we typically expect of employees. Just to wrap things up, let me give you a few things to consider. Independent contractors can be legitimate. They definitely have their role, but it's the overuse of it in the past several years that really has the government's attention. Employers can obviously save costs by misclassifying employees as independent contractors, and saving costs, of course, means that they can be more competitive and increase their revenue, which is why they're in business in the first place. However, who suffers by this? Well, the employees suffer because they probably lose out on wages and they lose out on other employee protections. State and federal agencies lose revenue. And it's generally not going to be worth the risk of knowingly misclassifying workers. Sometimes it's an easy decision. A lot of times it's not going to be an easy decision. If it were an easy decision, I wouldn't have run through those factors. I would have just said, here's the 1, 2, or 3 things you need to know, and it's not that hard. It can be tricky. And certainly the safe bet is to classify people as employees. You can't go foul of the law by doing that. So there is risk involved, but it's not going to be worth taking a big risk given the new criminal and very harsh civil penalties involved for misclassification. So that's a general overview. We don't have a lot of time this morning, but hopefully that gives you a better idea of the issue and the current business and political climate we're dealing with concerning that issue.
Brian, thank you so very much for your presentation. There are a lot of other things that we could ask Brian. He's just touched the tip of the iceberg. When I had my one-on-one with him, it was to go over issues like what should be in an independent contractor contract where you have some issues with too much control by the company that you have your contract with, but they still want you to be called an independent contractor, but you still have to obey the rules. And he knows all this material, and it is a great legal resource for individuals who want to have some protection in their relationships with the companies they have contracts with, and for businesses. So I'm really delighted that Brian could come this morning and address us, and I thank you so very much, Brian, for your time.